Congratulations, you made it over the hump. Here we are at lesson 4, where we'll discuss carbs versus fat for fueling athletic performance. All right, so when we talk about the battle of carbs versus fat, we have to look at the ketogenic diet because there is a lot of misconceptions, a lot of false claims and sketchy beliefs surrounding carb restriction and athletic performance, especially as it applies to endurance-oriented sports. But first, the basics of the ketogenic diet. So the ketogenic diet is characterized by a carbohydrate intake of 50 grams per day or less. And this calculates out to about 10% or less of total daily caloric intake. And this leaves dietary fat at about 60 to 80% or more of total calories. The ketogenic diet can typically raise blood ketone levels to 0.5 to 3.0 millimoles per liter. And usually when ketone levels are below 0.5 millimoles per liter, then generally speaking, people don't accept that as being enough carb restriction to truly qualify for what they call nutritional ketosis. It is a common claim that ketogenic diets are as effective as conventional high carbohydrate diets for athletic performance. But is this claim correct? And we are going to look at the evidence in just a moment. But I want to note that there's a term called keto adaptation, and that's an elevation in fat oxidation and a reduction in glycogen use. And it's also maximal elevations of circulating blood ketone levels. So that's what keto adaptation is characterized by. And the claim is that becoming keto adapted, also called fat adapted, the claim is that that's actually a good thing for athletic performance and endurance performance specifically. So we're going to examine whether that is correct or not, and I'll give you a spoiler. It's not correct. So it doesn't improve athletic performance, and we'll have a closer look at that. So fat is suboptimal fuel for athletic performance. And here's the physiology behind it. The maximal rate of ATP resynthesis from fat oxidation is about 0.4 moles of ATP per minute. Meanwhile, the ATP generated by glycogen breakdown is about 1.0 to 2.0 moles per minute. So that is many times greater than the amount of ATP that can be generated from fat oxidation. So this is our first hint that carbohydrate provides much more energy currency per unit of time than fat does. Now, during high intensity exercise, the rate of ATP synthesized from free fatty acids cannot match the rate of ATP used to fuel muscular work. So as a result of fat adaptation, there is a decreased activity of an enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase. And pyruvate dehydrogenase is required to break down glycogen. So when pyruvate dehydrogenase activity is decreased by carb restriction on a high-fat diet, then what happens is you don't have the same ability to break down glycogen and access glucose for fueling working muscles. And so when the rates of glycogenolysis or glycogen breakdown are decreased, then you can rightly say that, okay, you might be fat adapted, but you're also carb impaired. And that, of course, is a bad thing because carbs provide much more ATP per unit of time than fat does. So this is why low carb / ketogenic diets can be detrimental to sports that require continuous or intermittent high intensity efforts, which is most sports. And if you recall back to a previous lesson, where I showed the strength endurance continuum, most sports are a mix of endurance demands and higher intensity strength demands. And it's carbohydrate that fuels the higher intensity work outputs. Speaking of which, Dr. Jose Areta defines what he calls race winning moves. Dr. Areta is a professor at Liverpool John Moores University. And he is he's one of the I guess you could say the OG researchers in this area. And quoting him on the concept of race winning moves. Time trials, climbs, establishing breakaways, leadouts, and sprints are all situations that determine race winners in single day, multi stage, and grand tour bike races. All race winning moves occur at high intensity, and they are all dependent on carbohydrate availability and utilization. So let's see how that looks in an illustration. So the red line is carb utilization or carb dependence. The blue line is fat utilization. Okay, so over here on the vertical axis, we have percentage of fat used as fuel. And then on the horizontal axis, we have intensity or percentage of maximal aerobic capacity. So what we see is that the percentage of energy derived from carbohydrate at race winning move intensities, in other words, these high intensities, 80 to 100% of carbs, of percent of energy from carbs is used to fuel race winning moves. So the vast minority is going to come from reliance on dietary fat. So at these high intensities, we're looking at a vast predominance of carb dependence. And here are the intensities of race winning moves: 80 to 110% of maximal aerobic capacity. And over here, once again, the percentage of energy derived from carbs at race winning moves is 80 to 100%. So to just kind of simplify this busy slide, it's like the higher intensity, the work needed to be executed, the greater dependence on carbohydrate. And race winning moves are high intensity moves. All right, so here is the relative contribution of the various fuel sources during exercise. And so you can see that over here on the vertical axis, we have the contribution of the fuel source. And then over here, we have the intensity of the exercise. So at lower intensities, you have muscle triglyceride and plasma-free fatty acids. So here's muscle triglycerides at the lighter green, and then plasma-free fatty acids over here, the medium green, and then plasma glucose here at the darkest parts. Now, the thing that I want you to anchor onto is right here. The higher the intensity, the greater the dependence on muscle glycogen. So at the highest intensities over here, so 85% of VO2 max, we have a substantially higher dependence on glycogen than at these lower intensities. And so if your diet does not optimally support maximal glycogen storage, then you're simply going to be compromising your ability to execute high intensity exercise or high intensity moves, aka moves that are absolutely necessary for winning races. Then you can begin to see the bigger picture of why carbohydrate and sufficient amounts of it in the diet are so important for athletic performance. And with that, I'll see you back on lesson 5, where we take a more nuanced look at the research on ketogenic diets and athletic performance.